You are watching Apostolic Radio Charlotte.
Family relationships. I want to take that as a theme to talk about here today. But before I do, I want to tell you a funny story. I enjoyed it anyway. All of us love the funny things that kids say because kids say funny things. Last night, my son and I was going to a restaurant to pick up takeout. And if my wife's at work, my son and I are takeout bandits. And so we went to the restaurant and we were getting our food and they brought it out and I had paid for it and we were starting to leave out. And I told my son, I said, he's 7. I said, well, it seems like you've had a great day. I mean, all day long you've played computer games, you've watched videos, you've been on the computer. It was rainy, so it was pretty much all inside. And I said, it seems to me like you've just had a great day. Well, he thought about that for a moment. And he said, well, Daddy, I have something to tell you. I said, okay, what? He said, my life is harder than it looks. I tried to keep a straight face, but I busted out laughing. I couldn't do it. And he didn't. He was a little offended that I laughed. And he said, Daddy, seriously, it's harder than it looks. And I said, how so? How is your life harder than it looks? It looks to me like you pretty much, play with your games and your toys and just have a great time. And he said, well, it's not simple. He said, like games, the servers are always crashing. You have to reboot, you have to fix it. He said, videos, he said, the stream doesn't always work. Talking about Netflix. The stream doesn't always work. And I have to reboot the router. He said, my life is harder than it looks. And so I immediately made a note to tell other people about the hilarious thing my son had said. We look back on the problems of 7-year-olds, and it's fun to us. We have a good time with it. But let me change the subject matter here from simply changes in having a difficult time with your games, say. Holidays are about friendships, yes, but they are more than friendships. They are about the ties that bind. Now stay with me here for a moment. Friendship has a unique advantage and a essential disadvantage. And that is most of the friendships in our life they're moving targets. They're largely based upon shared interests. They're based upon proximity. You may have made a good friend in your neighborhood. You live in the same neighborhood. But if either of you move, it's not that you will not continue to have feelings of affection toward that person. You will. But the ability, the range of opportunity for your friendship will have been severely curtailed. For years, I played racquetball almost probably at least 4 or 5 days a week. And doing that, I developed a group of friends that I knew through racquetball. They were racquetball friends. And we would play. To this day, I have affection in my heart for all of the friends that I made during the racquetball years. But I realized here on the holidays that I haven't spoken to any of them in going on 4 or 5 years now. When I quit playing racquetball, the friendships, they faded. Now, do we still have kindness one toward another? Sure. But it's just I hate to use this word because it's a prejudicial word, but it's just a shallow friendship. It's based on shared interests, on proximity. And friendships oftentimes, because they're always kind of moving slowly, they don't produce near the stresses in our life as do the relationships that we are bound to, with those ties that bind us. And when you talk about these kinds of relationships, speaking firstly about marriage, you had better make a sincere effort to maintain the friendship, but more than the friendship, the goodness that is in your marriage. That is a tie that binds. More than that, our family members are ties that bind. We may love them, we may not love them so much. We may get along with them, we may not get along with them so much. We may get on their nerves, they may get on our nerves. But your family is pretty much bound to you. Maintaining relationships like that is much more difficult than simply managing a friendship here or there. However, the ability to have deep, long-term, profound relationships is much greater in these areas than they'll ever be with friends of shared interest, friends of proximity, friends of a temporary nature. And as a result, we should, all of us, make a special effort in relationships where we are bound together in the ties that bind. Can I have an amen? I want to share with you a few things today. And I started the way I did because I want to motivate every one of you to look at these relationships in your life and make an effort, make a resolution, make a commitment to build these relationships better than they ever have. The reason why I say that is the truth is, in many of these binding relationships, we turn where we get to the point where we simply manage them. We do not invest in them anymore. It's awfully quiet. I feel a lot of guilt kind of flowing back and forth across the place today. We just kind of manage them. We don't really invest in them anymore. I want to share with you some research that really came out of marriage research, but it is broadly applicable to any relationship that is not casual. Any relationship where you are bound together and you must make a decision on your own part to invest in that relationship. This research, it struck me that it is broadly applicable in these areas. Now, the research is predominantly in terms of marriage, which I have no problem sharing it. I think maintaining our marriages is one of the ways in which our lives stay strong, our church stays strong, our family stays strong. Can I have an amen? The research was looking for common themes in relationships that fail. In other words, if you want a plan on how to ruin your relationship, this is pretty much how to do it. It's several things that are almost always found in some degree or another in relationships that fail. In fact, these items are so strong, they are so absolutely common that they could use them to predict whether or not a married couple would be together for any length of time in the future. In fact, just looking at these four things, they had a 91% accuracy in who would be divorced in a few years. 91%. No other evaluation, just these four things. And so these things are something we might take seriously and think about. It's not enough for us to know what we should do. We have to do it. Can I have an amen? Remember James in chapter number 1. It's not enough to believe something. You've got to act on it. It's not enough to know something. Most of us have heard enough teaching and preaching to save the world. That's not enough. We've got to take action. We don't want to just be hearers of the word. We want to be doers of the word. Amen. And so this first one is, the moment I say it, you'll say, yeah, that makes sense. But the first one is this principle of escalation. Now, this is the first negative pattern that I want to bring to your attention that is broadly applicable in all of our lives. Escalation occurs when one person responds to the other in a negative manner, upping the ante of the disagreement. One person says one thing that's negative, and the next person says not just an equivalent negative thing, but they say something more ugly than the first person says. This is a negative pattern that people, by want perhaps of their personality, by manner perhaps of their bad habit, whatever, they fall into a habit of escalation. And then they don't understand how, looking back through their life, this one bad habit was the cause of failed marriages or failed relationships, families that can't get along with each other, people getting fired on a job, business partners who can't stand each other, and this principle of escalation. Now, you say, that's just research, brother. You're supposed to be preaching the Bible. Well, let me give you some Bible. 1 Peter, do not repay evil with evil, or insult with insult. Mighty God. This goes against the human nature because we always play this kind of game theory one with another. This you hit me, I hit you back. You can arguably make your case for that in a pre-grace world, just dealing with outsiders. But when you treat people you love that way, you have done yourself no favors. You have just made your life harder than it would have been. So we do not repay evil for evil. We do not meet an insult with an insult. This escalation will destroy friendships. It will destroy marriages. It will destroy family relationships. Disagreements are normal. Disagreements are natural. Disagreements are inevitable. These things are true. We cannot control for whether or not there will be a disagreement. We can only control for how we will respond to that disagreement. You say, well, they're not trying. Well, why would you make a bad situation worse by not trying either? And so we get in this bad habit of the fight starts over something silly. Who makes the best banana pudding? Well, that's easy. My wife makes the best banana pudding. Now, if you want to fight about it, meet me out in the grass. We'll roll around for a little while. You understand what I'm saying? It starts over something silly. But it doesn't stay there. Because neither person in the disagreement is in control of their spirit. Why are they not in control of their spirit? Where if you're a believer, if you're a Christian, it's probably because you haven't been praying like you should pray. Because if there's one thing that will help us control our spirit, it's a prayer life. And so you have this huge shouting fight that started over whether or not someone puts the cap back on the toothpaste. You never put the cap back on the toothpaste. Proverbs 12, reckless words pierce like a sword. Reckless words do great damage to binding relationships. You can't get away from these relationships. You're stuck with them. Love them or hate them, you're stuck with them. Get along with them or don't get along with them, you're stuck with them. And reckless words wreak a special damage in the relationships that they are like ties that bind. There's no getting out of them. So this is a quite important thing for us to think about in our life, not to escalate disagreements, not to escalate insults, not to escalate misunderstandings. Let me read from James chapter number 1. This is one of my favorite scriptures in all of the Bible. If anyone considers himself religious and does not keep a tight rein on his tongue, he deceives himself and his religion is worthless. James 1:26. Heavy words. The second principle, negative pattern that people get into to destroy these binding relationships is the habit of invalidating the other person's feelings, or invalidating the other person's opinion, or putting them down in some condescending manner over something you disagree with. They have thoughts, you have thoughts, but you think they're stupid because of their thoughts. They have feelings and you have feelings, but you think they are stupid because of their feelings. Invalidation can take a lot of forms. It can be caustic. It can be where one person always finds a way to make the other person feel bad. This is one of the most corrosive and damaging things that can happen in any relationship, particularly in marriage. We fall into bad habits where we get comfortable because we spend so much time together. We fall into bad habits of invalidating the other person's feelings because we think that is stupid. Or we get sarcastic, and even when we're trying to work through something, we keep slipping the knife in. Sorry, I'm not perfect like you are. Invalidation is a dysfunctional pattern. It is a terrible habit. If somebody feels that way, you don't have to express an opinion on why they feel that way. You just have to seek to understand what they are thinking about or worried about. Jesus took this to a very heavy level in Matthew chapter number 5, where he says, look, if anyone says to his brother Raka, he's answers to the Sanhedrin, But if anyone says, you fool, you are in danger of the fire of hell. In other words, you're calling someone stupid. And not in a fun manner. In a serious manner. That word raka basically interprets in our language from the Aramaic as empty-headed. If your neighbor calls you empty-headed, that's one thing. But a Christian should not do this. We should not invalidate one another. We should not allow contempt to enter into the other person's views. One of the reasons why it happens is because we're not expert on the same thing. We are expert on different things. And so we often express our lack of education in opinions. People have much more opinions than they have education. It's human nature. There's no sense fighting. It's the way the world works. Well, your spouse or your family member or someone that you're in a binding relationship with, they express opinion about something that you actually know something about. And it just pushes all your buttons. You are so sick of the ignorance, so sick of the lies, so sick, and you respond in a manner that doesn't try to educate. You respond as though they are beneath you, and we all do it. You may know more than your brother about some things, but the inverse is true. Your brother knows more than you about some things. You may find your wife's point of view to be silly or absurd, but it doesn't matter. She finds some of your views silly and or absurd. So what do we have to do? We have to get out of the habit of invalidating the other person's feelings. We have to get out of the habit of being dismissive or condescending. This is true for all of us. It's true for everybody, from the pulpit all the way to the Life Center. It's true for all of us. Particularly men, one of the ways in which we can do this, and I can do this particularly, is if we perceive risk differently. Most of the time, our wife sees risk differently than we do. And we'll take a child and we'll toss it up in the air a little bit, and it's perfectly safe to us. And our wife's like, oh, Jesus, oh, God, stop. And we respond not as, I'm being careful. In other words, you have a right to be afraid. We respond, well, that's just stupid. It's not like I'm going to drop the child, you see, and I'm preaching to myself. The antidote to invalidation is, of course, validation. Whether or not you like it, they have a right to feel that way. God gave them that right. You can try to help them understand. You can try to communicate. These are all positive. But invalidation is one of the negative habits that destroys our relationships that are binding. The third negative pattern that we fall into is what I'll call negative interpretations. This is where one person always believes the worst about the other person. No matter what happens, you believe the worst. This is particularly bad in families. If you have any friends who are in a big family fight, and we all do, and you hear about it, the worst possible motives are assigned to everything. So another sibling goes over and visits your parent, and it's not like, oh good, they're going to visit the family, that's wonderful. It's much more like, oh, they're just trying to control this, they're just trying to control that, they want to be the executor of the will. You assign the worst possible interpretation to someone's actions. Paul warned against this in 1 Corinthians chapter number 4, warning us not to judge the thoughts and not to judge the motives of others. Jesus said it like this in Luke chapter number 6. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own? We reveal a lot about ourselves by what we expect other people to be doing. Because you put yourself in their shoes, and if you assume that they're stealing from you, it's because, whether you admit it or not, you made a little slip there. and it just makes sense to you that in that situation they would steal, and you just revealed something about yourself. Because whether or not you'd admit it, you wonder if maybe you wouldn't steal if you were in that situation. It is very negative. It is very negative to assume the worst about people. If they are doing bad things, they will not get away with it. The truth will out them. You will find out, and you will be able to react accordingly. But in the meantime, you will not have put poison in the well of your own happiness. They're not going to get away with it forever. They might get away for a little while. It's much better than always getting in this dysfunctional pattern of assuming the worst about other people. I've seen this happen in churches where people assign negative assumptions to other people who they don't like on a personality level. Let me just say, all of our personalities are different, and sometimes personalities create their own friction, and there's naught to be done about it. It's just the way it works. Hopefully, with less competition, you say, well, how's that going to work in heaven? Well, I don't know. Good question. But let me say this. There's going to be a whole lot less competition in heaven than there is down here. And so maybe that will relieve a lot of this silliness. But I've seen people, I've been in churches where someone comes to the altar and repents. And I heard people in the church say after church at the restaurant, they should be ashamed of themselves in that altar down there like they've been living right. Well, my God, where did you want them to go? I mean, if they don't go there, what should they do? Pray in the woods? Bare religion. So we can get in this negative pattern. We're just destroying everything that's good in our relationships, in our life, and particularly in these relationships that we're bound in. That's not just casual friendships, by always assuming a negative interpretation to another person's action. Lord, help us not to be purveyors of this kind of a negativity in our lives, because the truth is there's another principle that we should all be reminded of that goes like this. The same manner with which you judge other people, other people are going to judge you. And so there's a feedback loop. I can't always explain it. I can't always plot it in some type of a graph. But there's a feedback loop in our life. And that which we project, it has a way of coming home after many days. And lastly, and I'm almost done. I'll be done in 5 minutes, maybe, if you're lucky, 6 if you're not. We've gone through these dysfunctional patterns whereby people destroy their relationships. Escalation, invalidation, negative interpretations, and finally that most familiar, where if we were honest, most of us would admit this is where we go to let the relationship die, and that is withdrawal and avoidance. After you've escalated everything, and after you've fought over silly things, and after you've invalidated one another, and after you've assumed the worst about one another, this is where it all goes to end. You simply withdraw. You don't try anymore. You avoid one another. You don't really try to fix anything anymore. You just try to make it to the end of the day without having a blow up. This is a terrible place to be. And this is the place where most people start seeking help. You see what I mean? They waited until the withdrawal stage, and now they say we need to get help. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't seek help. I just want you to be fair to the people trying to help you. That you waited to stage 4 to recognize you had bad elements in your relationship. You see what I'm saying? Is that fair? Let's be fair. Fair is good. I like fair. You waited to stage 4, and now you say, "Oh, let's get some help. Let's." And by now, it is the probabilities have been wounded by the first 3 phases of escalating it. Who can scream the loudest? Who can say the most hurtful things? By practiced and habitual invalidation. You don't have a right to feel that way. You're just stupid. Negative interpretations. Well, all she wants is my money. Brother, you ain't got that much. I mean, really. You see what I'm saying? And now all of a sudden, when we no longer try, we're like, my God, we should talk to somebody. If we can learn to do ourselves some favor and recognize that at the very beginning, we're poisoning our own wells in our life. Whether it's marriage, whether it's family relationships, whether it's church relationships, whether it's ministry relationships, we all have to work together with others in ministry. I just thought I would throw that in for your listening pleasure. However it happens, if we wait to this point, it is a very much more difficult and more challenging solution. Because we can't just, once it gets to withdrawal and avoidance, it can be fixed if both parties want to fix it. It can be corrected if both parties are sincere in making changes. But the problem is now we go back through the habits, and we recognize the errors, and we, both of us, make a resolve to correct these things. And until we correct these things, we're not going to have much to work toward, or we're not going to have much to build toward. When we get to this phase, it is really it's a late day. It's not without hope. There's been many relationships that came back from this phase. The risk, however, is that when you get to this point, one of the parties just does not care enough to try anymore. So, Lord, help us to have the wisdom to start making corrections earlier. And the first time you're in a relationship that is it's a relationship that has it's a binding relationship. It's not just, you know, a friend of proximity or a casual acquaintance. It's a binding relationship. The moment you catch it escalating, you've got to stop it. You say, well, they're crazy. I'm the only one with sense. Well, you said that like it's a bad thing. What if you were crazy? Wouldn't it be worse if you both were crazy? Well, I'm tired of being the only one with sense. Well, try being crazy for a while. See if that blesses you any. The escalation is a warning sign. We've got to recognize that reckless words wound. We got to pull it down. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's talk about the prayer life for a little while. Let's get this under control. This habitual invalidation, that's just stupid. You don't have a right to feel that way. You always say this kind of stuff. That invalidation, believe it or not, you're not the only one in the world with the right to feel anyway. And in every disagreement, there is a factual truth and there is the way the truth feels. And we, especially us men, we get in an argument over what the factual truth is. Okay? Well, bless God, you raised your right hand twice. Not once, twice. I did not. One time I was reaching for the creamer. Yeah, to hit me over the head with it. It doesn't matter only what's true. It also matters how it felt to live it. And we cannot invalidate the other person's point of view, nor can we invalidate their feelings. Thirdly, we cannot assume the worst about people. Yeah, they said it, and they may have been thinking that. They may not have been thinking about that. But if you always assume the worst, you poison your own wells of happiness. You say, well, what if I'm being tricked, or what if I'm being deceived? Look, deception is short term. It's not forever. You bless your own house by assuming the best until you know different. And when that day comes, you can handle it appropriately like a person with sense, rare though they are. But in the meantime, you will have not cursed your own house, your own family relationships, your own church relationships. Because after that, all there is avoidance and withdrawal, and that is a very unhealthy position. But the Lord's going to help us to do better than that. Amen? All right. This is life class. We're trying to have life and have it more abundantly. Let's all stand.
Thank you for watching Apostolic Radio Charlotte. Come worship with us.